The Ravens take down the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas for their first win of the season, 28-25. And I'm sure a lot of you guys are like me and really enjoyed the first 45 minutes of that game before sweating out the final 15. There's lots of stuff to get into for this game, with Derrick Henry taking off, Lamar being extremely accurate for most of the game, the defense putting on another run defense clinic, and yet another fourth quarter meltdown on both sides of the ball. I know there are a lot of unhappy fans despite the win, but I've got several reasons for you to be a lot more hopeful after this win. But now for the review. Let's get to it. Welcome in, everyone. This is Jordan with Ravens Flash Report, and while this win may have been ugly at the end, there were certainly a lot of things that Ravens fans should be excited about going forward. While I'm not going to serve you another compliment sandwich in this video, there is going to be the necessary back and forth as we talk about the good things that the Ravens did, as well as the things that will absolutely derail this team if they are not cleaned up. There were a number of things that I said this Ravens team had to do in order to secure the win against the Cowboys during my preview video before the game. One of those crucial things was stopping the run. After only 51 yards of rushing allowed all game, I think it's safe to say that this Ravens defense is extremely good at stopping the run. With this game, the Ravens bring their total of rushing yards against them up to 150 yards even, meaning they're averaging only 50 yards on the ground against them per game. Another thing I said the Ravens defense would have to do in this game is pressure the quarterback, and they did, but later in the game when the pressure was needed more, it seemed less present. Kyle Van Noy finished with another game of getting 2 sacks, bringing his total of the season up to 4 through just 3 games. As for the offensive side of the ball, I stated that this offensive line needs to be able to protect Lamar Jackson better, and while I wouldn't say it was perfect, it was definitely better. There were definitely pressures on Lamar, but 0 sacks on the day, as well as no turnovers by this Ravens offense. We will get into some of the other issues we saw with the offense later, but this is a much-needed step in the right direction for this offensive line. Another positive for the offense and the offensive line was how dominant the Ravens were running the ball. I know plenty of people that might wave this off saying the Cowboys' defensive line is terrible against the run, and that may be true, but just because they're bad doesn't mean we aren't good. Derrick Henry finishes the day with 151 yards and 2 touchdowns off 25 carries. Lamar added his own with 14 carries for 87 yards and another touchdown. And Justice Hill continues to be an effective reliever after rushing 5 times for 33 yards, including a 17-yarder. Something else I brought up in the preview that wasn't necessarily a prediction but more of a general question was whether or not we would see a heavy dose of targets for only 1 or 2 players, or if Lamar would spread the ball out more, and we saw in this game it was certainly the latter. Although Lamar only threw the ball 15 times, he hit 7 different receivers for a total of 182 yards and a touchdown. Now, I, for one, was extremely glad to see Bateman get that touchdown, especially with the move that he put on the defender in the end zone. Some other good things that I was hoping to see was a much better game from Marlon Humphrey and Kyle Hamilton. Marlon played excellent defense and was extremely physical. He also almost had his second pick of the season. Hamilton was playing much faster and seemingly much more confident than during his first 2 weeks, where his name wasn't brought up hardly at all. There's 2 other defensive players that I have to give a shout out to. One is Trenton Simpson, who continues to look faster and more comfortable in this defense week after week. And the other is my guy Barbarius Washington, who was clearly too much for CeeDee Lamb and too much for Brandon Cooks, who literally had to horse collar Washington to keep him from intercepting that pass. Funny how that wasn't ruled a more serious penalty than Odafe Owe simply tackling Dak Prescott. But now, let's turn our attention away from all of the sunshine and rainbows to look at some of the warts on this victory and some potential uncomfortable truths that this Ravens team might have to deal with for the entire season. If the home team is losing 28-6 at the start of the fourth quarter, a lot of the fans in the stadium will normally start heading for the exits, but not so much if you're the Baltimore Ravens. 19 unanswered points, a botched onside kick, a missed field goal inside of 50 in a dome, and the only other drive of the quarter besides the one that ended it was a 3-and-out. Yeah, I can understand where there might be some Ravens fans that feel like we lost, even though we won. I said before this game that I believe the issues facing Justin Tucker are mental, not physical, and I think this game pretty much confirms that. But at least Jordan Stout was much better in this game. In all fairness, we are going to touch on Justin Tucker's issues in a later video. Now, moving on to that botched onside kick. This is something that many Ravens fans have put on John Harbaugh's head, and I understand that given his background and given how good the Ravens special teams have been historically, but Zay Flowers straight up missed that ball. I've made my opinions known about the coaching decisions John Harbaugh has made so far this season between terrible challenges and playing too conservatively, but guys, that play is not John Harbaugh's fault. Even if you think he simply drew up the play wrong, Zay Flowers needs to secure that ball, even if that means just falling on it. If he falls on it right there, I think most of Dallas's momentum is squashed, and the Ravens might go down and score again anyway with how they were running it. Another unfortunate truth is that the Ravens are averaging 10 penalties a game. Now, whether or not all of the penalties called are valid is another discussion, and one that I don't believe I'm fully qualified to speak on just yet, but there were plenty of penalties that the Ravens committed on both offense and defense that were absolutely called correct. This is again another knock on the coaching staff as well as some of the more veteran players. If Faalele has a false start or a holding penalty here or there, it's much more understandable. Same thing with Nate Wiggins. But 13 penalties is more than just an inexperienced starter or a rookie making a mistake now and then. This team needs to improve its discipline and clean up the penalties because they are drive killers, especially late in the season and even more especially in the fourth quarter when you're trying to put the game away. But now let's talk about that actual elephant in the room, and that is the pass defense in the fourth quarter. Unfortunately for this one, I don't have any pretty words or rose-tinted glasses to try to shove on your face. The truth is, we kind of suck in the fourth quarter. Now, this is a topic where if you told me it's a John Harbaugh problem, it would be hard for me to see it any other way. We are just entirely too complacent and conservative on both sides of the ball. I've heard a lot of fans saying that these collapses fall squarely at the feet of the defense and Zach Orr, but don't forget what I said earlier about the Ravens' offense in the fourth quarter. All we did in the fourth quarter was miss a 46-yard field goal, go 3 and out, and then have Lamar run a fake handoff for a first down to seal the game. At what point does the offense help the defense? In the fourth quarter prior to that drive that ended the game, the Ravens offense ran only 9 plays for a total of 40 yards. I agree that our defense needs to be better late in the game, especially if we're up by multiple scores, and the coaches are fully aware that the passing game is almost the only option our opponents have left. But Monken and this offense absolutely need to help the defense in these games. I'm not absolving Zachary Orr of blame here, I'm simply saying it's not only his burden to bear. Now, I said at the start of this video that I believe this game should actually give Ravens fans a fair amount of hope going forward, and I mean that. Let's take a look at what we were most concerned about going into this game. I think it's fair to say that the offensive line was number one, and like I said earlier, it wasn't perfect, but it certainly was a step in the right direction. I still think there's some tweaks that this coaching staff needs to make, like putting Rosengarten in permanently at right tackle, but overall, it was certainly the best game that we've seen from this group. Now, after Game 1, many fans, including myself, were concerned about Derrick Henry's usage. Some were even concerned that he may not have it anymore. Week 2 probably made a lot of you feel better with Henry's 18 carries for 84 yards and a touchdown, but with what we saw yesterday from Henry and this Ravens run game, well, let me just say, welcome back to all of the non-believers. We saved you a seat. In all seriousness, though, I do believe that these fourth quarter collapses will become less frequent as the season goes. But if the Ravens want to get rid of that stigma, they need to stay aggressive with their play calling on both sides of the ball. As they say, you play to win the game. At the end of the day, a win is a win, and while it might not have been as convincing by the end of it as it was during the first 3 quarters, there's no doubt in my mind that this team has the ability to compete with any other team in this league, on both offense and defense. Next week we take on the Bills, which is going to be another tough test for this Ravens team. But if they can build on the improvements we saw in this game and keep working to stay aggressive in the fourth quarter, I don't think there's any team the Ravens can't beat right now. If you did enjoy this post-game reaction and review, please go ahead and hit that like button below. If you're new around here, subscribe. And if you have any thoughts that you want to get out about this game or this team after its first win, please put them down in the comments section. And as always, stay safe out there. Go Ravens.